Good day, gentlemen. I'm in a deeply fulfilling, peaceful, passionate 7-year relationship with my beautiful girlfriend. But I damn sure wouldn't be here if I had listened to modern dating advice, and I don't think I need to explain why. But if you don't know me yet, my name is Benny, and I've studied love and relationships for close to a decade now, both modern research and ancient principles. And specifically, there are 4 ancient love lessons that profoundly changed my relationship, and I want to share them with you today in a practical and actionable way so that you can get here as well. And by the way, if it's your first time here, no, my voice does not usually sound this fucked. I've been ill for the last 2 weeks, but I found this cool spot here with those 2 trees, and the fog came out this morning, and I was like, dude, I have to film this video. Like, this is the perfect situation and scenery for this video, so here we go. The first lesson comes from this 1st century historian, Roman historian, Quintus Curtius Rufus. No, you don't need to know who that is, but he wrote a history of Alexander the Great, and in there he wrote a Latin sentence that I won't even try to pronounce, but translated into English it means something like still waters run deep. In terms of relationships, this means that real love is slow and calm and peaceful. And maybe for you, relationships so far have been the opposite of that. Very high highs and very low lows. This happens to a lot of people nowadays, and my theory... Did you see this bumblebee? Did you see this thing? It was massive, holy shit. Anyway, this happens to a lot of people nowadays, and my theory behind this is that without knowing it, we get addicted to this roller coaster of passionate lovemaking and then passionate fights, or profound chemistry and then devastating heartbreak. Why would anyone get addicted to that, you might ask? Well, because for a lot of us, it's the only thing that makes us feel the one emotion that we all want to feel but rarely ever get to feel nowadays. And no, it's not feeling loved. Let me explain. If we say that there's a spectrum of emotions from 1 to 10, 1 being extremely dark emotions, 10 being extremely light emotions, then where does your day-to-day life play out? Between 4 to 6, right? There, we just feel bored, we feel unalive, we feel almost dead. There's a bunch of studies nowadays that showed very clearly that humans would rather feel like shit than feel nothing. And for a lot of us, this roller coaster of modern relationships and modern dating is the one thing that gets us out of this ordinary 4 to 6 area, the one thing that makes us feel a 1 and a 10 sometimes, the one thing that makes us feel the one emotion we all want to feel, and that is feeling alive. But brother, chemistry doesn't equal connection. Intensity does not equal depth. If you've confused these two in the past and it caused you to sabotage a good relationship, then I've recently made a separate video where I go into the 4 main patterns that men fall into that make them sabotage relationships, make them sabotage good relationships. If you're curious on that, I've put it in the video description and the pinned comment. You can check that out later. Anyway, I would argue we have it all backwards. It's not that our relationships should get us out of our boring day-to-day lives. In reality, our relationship should be that place of retreat that makes us feel at peace and helps us go out into the world and take risks, chase that dream, build that business, move to that country, and experience both the 1s and the 10s of life. This is where me and my girl are at right now, and I would not be where I am in life and as a man myself without her influence, without her support. No fucking way. And that brings me to lesson number 2, because without knowing it, we are heavily influenced nowadays by the ideas of the romanticists who only lived a couple hundred years ago, and they weren't that smart. Their ideas of what love is and what love should be had a very negative impact on my own relationship, and I don't want you to end up in the same trap, because the ancient Greeks had a very different way of looking at love, and this way served me very well. I learned this from the British writer and philosopher Alain de Botton, who is, in my opinion, just one of the greatest writers nowadays and just a stud of a human. So let's start with the romanticists. They said that if someone loves us, they will know what we need, they will know what we want, and they will want to be there for us always. They came up with this whole concept of the one who will end all our suffering and all our loneliness. This concept literally didn't exist up until a couple hundred years ago, and it's fucking us up nowadays. The romanticists essentially said, and keep this phrase in mind for later, all you need is love. Then there are the ancient Greeks. And the ancient Greeks had a very positive impact on my relationship, right? Because they didn't think too much about love. Instead, what they focused on was when two partners come together, and they love each other, of course, right? But they didn't focus on that. When two people love each other and come together, they are each other's teachers and each other's students. They saw relationships less like a finished product and more like a process of growth. They essentially said it's not about finding the one, but about building the one relationship that will last a lifetime. They essentially said, yeah, sure, love is important, but, and keep this phrase in mind again, love isn't enough. And I think we can all see how their view will serve us very well nowadays when it comes to building fulfilling lifelong relationships. And actually, I recently found the perfect modern example to make my point here, because Mark Manson, the guy who wrote the absolute banger of a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he mentioned this in one of his videos. Not only did the Beatles have a song called All You Need Is Love, the exact romanticist's view, but also John Lennon, who wrote the song, beat both of his wives, abandoned one of his children, and verbally abused his gay Jewish manager. Interesting where that whole view of all you need is love led him, right? But then even further, Mark Manson mentioned another song that I had never heard before called Love Is Not Enough, the exact ancient Greek way of looking at love. And there we go. Okay, and this song, fucking hell. And this song is by the industrial metal and rock band 9 Inch Nails. And here comes the crazy part. The lead singer and primary songwriter of 9 Inch Nails, called Trent Reznor, who is known for his, let's just say, extreme performances, got clean from all drugs, married one woman, had 5 children with her, and publicly said that fatherhood was the best thing that ever happened to him. That's the real-life impact of adopting the ancient Greek mentality of love. Now, for lesson 3, I talk a lot about the attraction and polarity between the masculine energy and the feminine energy on this channel. And now, let's touch on vulnerability, because it's one of those things that is heavily praised nowadays. But she doesn't want your vulnerability. She wants something slightly different. And if you adopt this modern view of vulnerability, her feminine will lose trust in your masculine. Firstly, I need to explain there are 4 masculine archetypes that have been used for thousands of years in myths and tales and stories, which are the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And for now, I want to focus on the warrior, and first, the boyish, immature version of the warrior, which is the hero. Because the hero, he tries to hide his limits from himself and from other people. He tries to keep up this invincible persona, this heroic persona of always saving the day. But through that, he runs into a battle that he can't win, and he hurts himself through that. In a relationship specifically, I fell into this for years, honestly. And it led me to a place where I always wanted to be there for my girl, right? I always wanted to help her with everything, but it led to a place where I became afraid of sharing my imperfections with her, of sharing my needs with her. And then I didn't have those needs met. Because, well, if I don't tell her what I want, then how could she know? She can't just randomly smell what I want like the romanticist thought, right? Again, teacher, student, like the Greeks said. You teach your partner what you want, they receive it, they give it to you. That's it. Now, let's go deeper on this. The difference between the hero and the warrior is the hero thinks he doesn't have any limits, or he shouldn't have any limits, and he should be perfect. The warrior, he knows his limitations because he has experienced them, he has seen them, and so he is able to ask for help when he needs help without feeling like less of a man. The warrior combines aggressive action towards his goal with a mature humility about his limitations. And so while the warrior, the manly warrior, wins his battles, the boyish hero loses his battles because of his perceived invincibility. When I understood this, I also understood why she couldn't fully trust me. The simple truth is, she can't trust a man who pretends to be fine when she can clearly see that he's not fine. But then I leaned too far into the other extreme, into vulnerability, and it also led to her losing trust. You can imagine this like me trying to throw a rock at a tree. First, I threw too far left, then I threw too far right. And I only started hitting the tree dead center when I understood what I'm about to tell you. And this led to my girl gaining massive trust in me and me gaining massive trust in myself. I realized that when she says, that she wants me to be vulnerable with her. It's less about me telling her about all my problems and more that she wants to feel me fully. And so far, up until this point that we're at in my story, she couldn't do that because of something that I learned from Robert Bly, who, when he was still alive, was probably the most knowledgeable man on the masculine, and he wrote about the deep male. What he's talking about here are essentially the sides of ourselves that we want nobody to see. We even hide them from ourselves. These sides of ourselves that are capable of very dark actions. The shadow, as Carl Jung called it, right? And Robert Bly's work taught me that the man who knows these sides of himself, who knows his shadow, can be vulnerable with his woman in the right way, not in this modern way that pushes women away and makes them lose trust in you. This man is able to not overshare to the point where she has to become a mother for him. And instead of leaning to the other extreme and pleasing her and always being there for her and being that nice guy who always tries to help her because that's the only thing that makes him feel like he's enough and makes him feel like he deserves her love, this man knows what he wants and he knows how to get it. He's decisive, like the clean cut of the warrior's sword. Robert Bly specifically writes, "This kind of wildness or unniceness is not the same as macho energy, which men already know enough about. Wild man energy, by contract, leads to forceful action undertaken, not with cruelty, but with resolve." This is the difference between the nice guy who the feminine cannot trust and the kind leader who the feminine can just naturally trust, even though the feminine might not always agree with his decisions. And this is where we, as men, become different to our fathers without becoming the opposite. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but certain fathers of ours, right, they might have either leaned to the extreme of kind of the tyrannical father, the very dominant father, or this kind of nice guy father without any boundaries. Either one of those. We see parts in our fathers that we don't want in ourselves. And that's not out of disrespect or because we don't love our fathers, but because of evolution. We just want to become better than our fathers, and that's very natural. And if we had a good father, he would want us to become better than him. So I love my father. He wants me to win. He wants me to become better than him. But there are still parts of him that I don't want in myself. But I need to be very careful that I don't become the exact opposite of my father. This is what helped me hit the tree dead center. And this is the problem with most modern dating advice, modern relationship advice. It's too polarized. It's either be vulnerable with her or be mysterious and don't text back quickly. This modern advice makes men and women feel like they're the enemy. And we see this so much with modern man-hating forms of feminism or the red pill and the men going their own way movement, which is all bullshit in my opinion. There's this fantastic quote by Robert Moore, yes, another Robert, and Douglas Gillette in their book on the 4 archetypes called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And they write towards the very end of this book, this is like on the last page, I'm not even kidding, they write, "The enemy for both sexes is not the other sex, but infantile grandiosity and the splitting of the self that results from it. Immature forms of masculinity and femininity, that's the enemy for both sexes, immaturity." And by the way, if we look at ancient Egypt, thousands of years ago, they had figured this shit out. Because, for example, they had 2 gods for the masculine and the feminine, right? They had Ra, the sky father, and Isis, the earth mother, right? So Mother Earth, Father Sky. That's what everyone nowadays is thinking about. And they think these are opposites. But the ancient Egyptians had 2 more gods. They also had Nut, the Sky Mother, and Gab, the Earth Father. So they have 4 gods to describe the masculine and the feminine, like yin and yang, right? Parts of the one are in the other. You have 2 gods that describe the sky, and one is a mother, one is a father, and 2 that describe the earth. One is a mother, one is a father. And so they're not enemies. They're actually like puzzle pieces that fit together. Yes, we are different and we have the same value, but we are complementary opposites. We're not enemies, we're complementary opposites. We are like puzzle pieces that fit together. Really, masculine and feminine is a spectrum, and every one of us has a point on that spectrum where we feel most like ourselves, most natural, most alive. And this brings me to lesson number 4, because this tied all of this together for me, and it will do the same for you, because nowadays we are made to believe that love, oh, now the sun is coming out. Oh, this is so nice, man. Fucking hell. Wow, this is nice. It's been cold, I'll be honest. It's like windy and cold and wet. I don't know. Anyway, we are made to believe nowadays that love and success don't go together. Right? You can either pick the path of the guy who gets into a relationship early and just gets married early and all that stuff, or you can stay single and become a millionaire. This is the legendary breakup scene in the movie Whiplash, where Andrew breaks up with his girlfriend because she's holding him back from becoming one of the great jazz drummers. But honestly, I love the movie, and this sounds cool, but the reality of love and success is a completely different one. Modern society has this very limited, very narrow view of what love and success is, because we just think, well, yeah, okay, if I am in a relationship, I need to invest time into that relationship, so I can't invest that time into building success for myself. But again, ancient stories can remind us of the truth and can give us clues on how to get there. And this brings me to the story of Odysseus. In ancient Greece, he was the king of Ithaca, and what drove him through 10 grueling years in the Trojan War, and then 10 even more grueling years lost at sea, battling all kinds of dangers. What drove him through that was not glory or riches or fame or returning to his kingdom and being king again. What drove him through that was the love for his wife, Penelope. Look at the greatest men today and you'll see this over and over again. They know this shit. Peak athletes like Tom Brady, Cristiano Ronaldo, they're talking about the impact their women have on them, right? Or you look at fucking billionaires who get married even though they could lose half of their wealth, and they even remarry again, like get married for a second time after getting divorced. Why do they do that? They could lose half of their wealth, right? I think a great example of this is the wide receiver Marquise Goodwin. Maybe you've heard his story. It's a tragic but also a beautiful one, because he tragically lost a child of his a day before a football game. And of course, he didn't want to play. I mean, I think we can all see why. But his wife told him, you can do it. You have the strength. Do it for your son that we just lost. And he played the game, and he scored his first touchdown of the season, and they won the game. And this makes me tear up. This genuinely makes me emotional, because we all know the power of a woman that we love telling us, you can do it. We all know the power. It's like a small thing, right? You go to the gym, you can't lift the weight, suddenly your girl tells you, you can do it, and easily you bench the fucking weight. I don't know, a friend of mine, he recently told me this story, right? His name's Ben. He was climbing with his girlfriend, and he couldn't figure out a certain move on one of the routes he climbed, and she just told him, you can do it. Next time, he did it. Easy, not even struggling. That's the power of love, brother. As partners, we can help each other to be the best that we can be. Look at the great industrialists, right? The wealthiest and most powerful men around 100 years ago. Napoleon Hill pretty much studied 500 of them to write his book, Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about the fact that so many of them said they wouldn't be where they are now without their women. They said they were inspired by their women to build this success. And he also observed that the certain ones of them who got to peak success, and then it got to their head and they traded their wife for more women or younger women, whatever, right? Those men lost their success and lost the women. Because when we have a great woman by our side, we don't just do it for ourselves, we do it for her as well. And unfortunately, in the modern world, we completely overlook the just massive inspiration that the feminine can have on us men. We also feel this inspiration when we're in big nature, on top of a mountain, swimming in an ocean, just surrounded by Mother Earth in its most bold and most beautiful forms. That's where we get great ideas. Maybe you've had that experience where you were in nature and suddenly you get the exact idea that you needed to reach your goal. Because sure, hard work is necessary and is important, but one good idea can save you, depending on the level that you're at, can save you days or weeks or even years of hard work. And even with the hard work, with the crazy long hours that you and me might be working sometimes, that most people think are fucking crazy. I've worked, for the majority of the last 6 years, I've worked over 70 hours a week on different businesses that I had. Dude, even with that, when you have a great woman by your side who supports you, who helps you recharge for the battles ahead, who helps you relax and zoom out and not get caught up in the day-to-day details of your work, but zoom out and have great ideas, it gets so much easier to just crush your goals. Now, the truth is, you can learn all these lessons, but implementing them might be really difficult for you because you might still be self-sabotaging, and this might not even be your fault. Carl Jung explained this perfectly when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The unconscious will direct your life and you will call it fate. What a banger of a quote, but that's most likely what's happening to you right now. This is why you haven't been able to build that deep, fulfilling, peaceful relationship you truly want. So that's what you need to work on, making those unconscious patterns that are running your relationships without you even knowing it and sabotaging maybe the relationship that you're even in currently. You need to make them conscious. And like I mentioned earlier, I recently filmed an entire episode where I dive deep into these unconscious patterns, and I talk about the 4 most important, most critical patterns I see all of them and that I work with fall into, and how to actually get out of them. This is the most fundamental episode that I've ever filmed, and it will help you to finally stop sabotaging good relationships. So go watch this right now. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.